In this video we will look into a function on linked list, add last. So here is a stack and here is a link. We have a linked list in the stack and this is pointing to 4k, and we have in this linked list object we have summary about the linked list. So head is pointing to null and tail is also pointing to null and size is 0. So we wrote a function which says add last, and we are saying add 5 to the linked list. So now we don't have head and tail, both are null. So in the initial place we will create a node and with data 5, and this will be referencing to null. And in this scenario where the size is 0, we are going to point head and tail to the same object. Head and tail will be pointing to the same object. So we are going to update the summary object to which head and tail will be pointing to 5. For example, the address of this object is 5k, then this will be updated to 5k. Head is 5k and tail is 5k. These are the address, and we are going to update the size to 1. And if we add one more object to the linked list, say add last 3, so we are going to create a new node. We created the new node with data 3 and update the tails next to point to this new node and update the tail to point to this node. So here we are going to update the address of the tail. So for example, tail is at 3k, then we are going to update the tail's address to 3k and update the size to 2. Once again, if we are adding one more node to the linked list, add last 7. So the steps involved will be create a new node. First step with data, this is the second step 7, and the third step will be updating the tails next to point to this new node. Fourth step will be updating the address of the tail. For example, if this is a 2k address, then we are going to update the tail's address to 2k. This is the fourth step, and the fifth step is updating the size 2 to 3. So in this fashion we are going to add the nodes at the end in the linked list, and at the tail it will point to the null. The next pointer of the tail will point to null. So in this manner we are going to add the nodes to the linked list. So let's go and implement this in the code. So we have a function here, add last. So first step what we are going to do is create the new node n is equals to new node of, there is a constructor in the node object which takes data and pointer to the next object. So we are going to add data 5 comma null. We are going to add this object to the linked list. So if this is the special case we are going to handle where this is the first object we are adding. So size is equals to 0, then we are going to write some code here, and in the scenario else we are going to do something else. So when the size is 0, that means the head and tail is pointing to null. So in this scenario we are going to point head equals to tail equals to new node, and in the else, where the size is greater than 0, we are going to point tails next to this node and then update the tail is equals to node. And the last step what we are going to do is increment the size plus. So let's go and test this function. So here we are adding 5 to 6. Let me add one more, 8. So I'm running this function at 10. Five. So let's look what exactly the issue is. Okay, we hard coded this value. We need to update it to I. Right? The input, whatever the input we are getting, we are going to add that to the linked list. So let me run once again. 5, 2, 6, 8 and size is 4. Let's do a dry run of this code. So we have, so when we added the this is the line 1, and this is 2, and this is 3, else is 3. So when we say add last 5 here, so we have created a new node. This is step 1, and if the size equals to 0, so if you, at the first element it enters this if statement, and we are pointing head and tail to this new node, and then we are incrementing the size to 1. So this is for add last 5, and once again when we do add last 3, so we are creating a new node at line 1, and in the else statement, because now the size is equals to 1, we already have 5 in the list, so size is greater than 0, is not equal to 0, then we are going to point the tails next to the new node here, and then we are updating the tail to point to this new node, and in the last we are incrementing the size of the linked list. So let's do add last 7. So add last 7, here in the first line we have created the new node with the 7, and then in the else, because size is not equal to 0, then we are pointing the tail of this tails next to the new node, and again we are updating the tail here. So tail is moving to the last element in the node in the list, and after that we are incrementing the size becomes 3. So this is the add last method of linked list.